Welcome everyone to the Good Schools Guide Forum today. We've had a full-on programme of talks. I think a lot of you have been in some of those other ones as well. So welcome to the Good Schools Guide. We review schools. We know schools. We have reviewed almost every single school that you'll see out there in that room. So hopefully you guys have had a really good day speaking to lots of schools. If you want to read our independent reviews on them, then do check us out, thegoodschoolsguide.co.uk. We have a stand in the corner of the room by the entrance as well, and we are offering a show discount for access online to all of our reviews. So do come and pop by and say hello, and the team will give you some information. So, welcome everyone. We are here to discuss girls education. What are the challenges of educating girls? I have a fantastic panel here with me today who I would say know how to educate girls pretty well in terms of their bios and what they've been able to achieve in their careers to date. So we're really, really lucky to be able to hear from them today. We'll have about 25 minutes to discuss a few hot topics in the world of girls' education, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end. So we'll have about half an hour today. I'm going to introduce our panel members myself in a second, but before I do, can I just ask for a show of hands, please? So we are here to talk about educating girls. I would love to hear from the floor today how many of you are looking for an all-girls school for your child, and how many are looking for a co-ed school environment. So that would really help us get a sense of what environment you're looking at for your child. If you're not sure, I'll do a not sure afterwards as well. If you're choosing between both, if you're trying to figure out what the best environment is going to be for your child, then that will be the third option. Okay, so put your hands up, please, if you are looking for an all-girls school. Okay, fantastic. If you're looking for a co-ed environment, okay, fewer. Diamond, okay, well, we have some experience on the panel in that as well. And who here is really not sure, is thinking, okay, the majority, really not sure, need to be convinced. I think by the end of this session, I might do the question again and see what the answer is. So we have here with us, we have Emma. Emma is about to start in September at St. Catherine's in Bramley. And that is a mostly day school, and I think it's about 1/5 boarders at the school. Obviously an all-girls school. Then we have Rachel. Rachel is the head of Benenden, almost all total boarding school out in Kent. Oh, and sorry, I should have said so. Yes, Emma's school, St. Catherine's Bramley, out in Guildford, so home counties. Benenden, do you purport to be home counties? Are you commutable to London, or how do you?
1 hour to London.
1 hour to London, there we are. So mostly boarding out in Kent. And Amy is the head of the inner city girls' school we have in the panel, Queensgate. All similar numbers of students, actually. I think it's all about 500, 600 students in each of yours. And again, all girls, day school only. You don't have any boarders, do you? You're in those wonderful, wonderful townhouses in central London.
No boarders anymore. Apparently we did fit them in previously.
In those houses, in those buildings?
Yes, that's what I can tell from our we do have a school history, which I was reading the other week for VE Day. So we did used to have boarders, no, we're all fully day school now, yes.
Lots of pupils filling up those rooms. Fantastic. So we have a central London school, so that's Queensgate. We have 2 in the suburbs and home counties, all providing a fully all-girls environment for the students. So we're going to start talking a little bit about that choice. At what point do you know, or how do you figure out whether an all-girls school is going to be the best fit for your daughter? Because that's what most of you here are wanting to find out. So I'd like to hear each of your answers on that. I imagine a lot of your daughters are at prep or primary school, and you're looking at that senior school step. A lot of them will be in a co-ed environment. So how do you know that a single-sex environment, all-girls school, is going to be the right fit? Any pointers, any advice, please? Emma?
Hello. I think for me, and as a parent of 2 primary-age children as well, it is quite a difficult decision to make in those younger years. My children are currently at a co-ed prep and will come with me to St Catherine's as an all-girls school in September. And for me, it's having something that lines up with your family values, finding a school that for me was about working hard but also playing hard, where there was a culture of kindness amongst the students there. And whilst my girls are at a co-ed prep, I never hear about boys. They may as well be at a single-sex prep school. And that made it really, really clear that, that's their tendency, that's who they want to be with, that's who they work well with. And I think it's knowing your children really, really well and visiting those schools and making sure that it is a setting and an atmosphere that your children will fit into. And as I look back on their time in prep school and primary school, I think, was there ever a time that I wouldn't have been sure that an all-girls setting would have been right for them? And maybe when they were really little in nursery and in reception, they probably did have a slightly more co-educational play group. They might have had play dates with some boys, but as they've got older and they've sort of grown into their own personalities, they very much gravitate towards other girls, and they work nicely and they play really well with them. And I think they've sort of established that pattern for themselves, and that's what we see in the girls coming to our school, certainly in year 7 and 8. They are pleased to have space from boys for a bit. I think as they get a little bit older, they look for more interaction outside of school and socially, but there certainly is that period of time when they are in year 7, 8 and 9 that they're glad to have the space to just be with girls.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
And one of the joys of the UK education system is that there is so much choice, and that's really important because every child is different. And I would echo what Emma says. Actually, it's about finding the right school that feels right for your daughter or child, because actually every child has their own needs. In terms of girls who seem to do well in all-girl education settings, well, frankly, it's all of them, but I see 2 particular types who come in. I see the girls for whom they perhaps need their confidence building, they need to feel, they need to be nurtured in that way to ensure that they do speak up. They are perhaps a little introverted, they are perhaps a little shy, a little unsure of themselves. And in an all-girl environment where you are targeting girls and how they learn, actually what you can do is you can encourage that confidence and you build that self-esteem over time. And you can nurture that slightly less competitive environment, perhaps, where some girls will thrive greatly. Having said that, I then have some girls who come in and they thrive because they just love throwing themselves into every aspect of school life. And for us as well, being a boarding setting, because we have them 24/7, they really can do that. And so they get involved in STEM, they get involved in drama, they get involved in music, they're all involved in sport. And when you've got sort of CD teams for team sports, it means that they all get involved in some way. And there's no need to pigeonhole yourself in that environment. And I see girls who want to take all of those opportunities really do enjoy an all-female environment, because there's never... they're not pushed out by boys in any way, and particularly that's important for things like maths, STEM, engineering, which are perhaps more gendered in a co-educational setting.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely pick up on that point. The Girls' School Association, of which all our schools are members, have done stats on it. Girls are statistically more likely to be doing STEM A-levels. They are more likely to be getting into the kind of traditional boys' sports, like football and cricket, if they're in the single-sex environment, because somehow in the co-ed, they're still getting the message, some of these things are not for you. And I think one of the real beauties of our schools is that everything is for them. Everything is for them as girls, and as well as thinking about some of those characteristics that can sometimes maybe, that quietness and things, we know that generally boys are often, and all of these are stereotypes and they're generalizations, but they do come from somewhere. They tend to be a bit more confident, a bit more kind of punchy. When my girls come back from Model United Nations conferences, they'll tell me how the boys are quite happy to, shout out their points, even if they're definitely not correct. And we can very much actually, build the girls' confidence to kind of almost try and meet the boys a little more on that playing field, but also we can think very much about what are the things that make girls great? What are the natural traits that make girls better at things than boys in some ways, and how can we build an atmosphere where those are celebrated and kind of empowered, and be the best version of you, because that's going to be brilliant in whatever you want to go into. And so I think that's a really special thing about our environments, is thinking this is all about girls and how girls can be brilliant.
Brilliant. So Rachel and Amy have touched a little bit there on the research that's available for anyone who's looking to educate themselves a bit more on the outcomes of girls in a co-ed environment versus in a single-sex environment. And this is, by the way, today by no means a talk to push everyone to single-sex education. And we're going to move on to a little bit about why co-ed could be so brilliant as well, and how to support your daughter who might be in a co-ed situation environment in a minute. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the research and some of the really striking elements of any research that you've read on the outcomes and the differences for girls who have been through an all-girls education versus a co-ed. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Happy to, and you'll have to tell me to be quiet because this is the soapbox I like getting on. I think it's quite well known. It's sort of anecdotally out there that girls tend to do better academically in an all-girl environment. It's marginal actually, but it is there. And as Amy has pointed out, the take-up of STEM subjects is more notable. I think moving away from the academic, though, there are two things that strike me particularly about the research that's now coming out. The first is that girls are more likely to stay in competitive sport when they're in an all-female environment. You're making it the norm, it's part of day-to-day life, and they enjoy that competitive part of life. I have a brilliant statistic on this. So the Olympic team last summer, the women's Olympic team, 25% of those were educated in all-girls environments. That probably tells you a little bit about how how sport is supported for young women, therefore, in those environments to enable those to go on to be elite athletes.
And Rachel, do you know the stat for a all-girls school overall? It's much lower than 25%. It's much lower than 25%.
Much as I think it should be. No, it's much lower than 25%. So it's disproportionate.
I think it's about 10. I think it might be around 10, because I think it's 17% in single-sex education overall, and about 7% boys, but something like that.
Yeah. So that one's key. And the other one for me that I think I particularly I think we need to focus on and think about how we achieve this, is that girls who are educated in single-sex environments are more likely to go on to leadership of some form in later life. There's some great research in South America around this particularly. And so they're more likely to go on into thought leadership, into political leadership, into business leadership. And we are unpicking why that is. A lot of that is to do with self-confidence and building self-esteem. But also, there is an element where they are in a girls' school, all those leadership roles are taken by women. So you have more chance of leadership opportunities in a girls' environment. And they just don't question their right to be in the room and be at that table. And I think that is so important in terms of how we foster our future leaders. And frankly, we need them.
I mean, I would add in, we've got people like Marianne Siegert. Obviously, we had Sheryl Sandberg kind of led this curve. Baroness Helena Morrissey, who've written fascinating books on women in the workplace, female characteristics, and why gender inequality still exists in so many professions. And I think something we can really do in girls' schools is really think about what it is that their research is finding and how can we counteract that. So we probably all know that statistic that, men will apply for a job if they've got 60% of the, desired assets, whatever it is. Women wait until they've got 100% and still come into me and go, could I actually go for this? And so, one little thing we do is we make sure we say to girls regularly, put yourself forward. Don't, take that risk. We talk about good, scary all the time, of not always having to be safe. I've sent my year 4 this morning off on their residential saying this is good, scary. But telling them also, don't be too modest. All those female things where we're being modest, and if a man is assertive, we're bossy, that kind of thing. And we're actually saying, no. Own your achievements. Be proud of your achievements. Say that you did it. Say you did it well. Because what I want is that by the time they're going into the workplace, they're the ones applying when they've only got 60% of the spec, because they're just giving themselves the chance. They're the ones in a meeting not letting their idea be taken by anybody else. They're saying that this is my idea, this is my achievement. When they're congratulated, they're not doing the thing that probably I know I did when I got my headship, of going, oh, well, I've had great mentors and I've worked very hard, those grindstone adjectives, as opposed to just saying, thank you. And so we're really working with, using that research that these brilliant writers are coming out with, and then really working with our girls to start, inculcating different attitudes right from a really early age, so that hopefully by the time they leave school, these things are second nature to them, and they're ready to just go out and live in the world.
Okay, and
can I just add one little bit to that? I think it's the power of the alumni in schools that can be really powerful, and this applies to any school that you're looking at in terms of co-ed or single sex, to see the types of people that are coming back to school and the types of roles that they occupy, so that when you're looking at whichever senior school that might happen to be, to see the spaces that those students have gone out into. And that's great for us as girls' schools to be able to bring back these really insightful careers that our own girls have gone on to. But I think it's important for co-ed schools too, to make sure that they've got the alumna that will inspire the girls in particular.
Brilliant, thank you. And we had at least one person here who's looking at a diamond structure system. So Emma at the moment is just finishing up at the moment as a head of a diamond structure girls' school. So could you talk a little bit about that and how different it is to co-ed and all girls?
So a diamond structure is quite an interesting structure. There are a number of schools throughout the country. For those of you who don't know, a diamond structure is where the children are co-ed for prep school, and then they are single sex from the ages of 11 through to 16, and then they come back into a co-ed environment for the sixth form. And that, for a lot of families, meets their needs in terms of what they're looking for, often for families that have both boys and girls and who want to send their children to the same school, so can therefore send their children to the same prep school, but in those very important years of 11 through to 16, they can be educated separately and draw on all the benefits of that, and then perhaps come together again in the sixth form in a co-ed environment as they step out towards university. And that works, I think, logistically for lots of families, as well as having a balance between getting some of the benefits of an all-girls or all-boys school, and then some of the benefits of a co-ed school as well.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Well, it's all very well and good. It's very rosy, a very fantastic, inspiring picture of what it's like to be a girl in an all-girls school. But for the audience members here who that's not a possibility because of the schools that they have available to them, or they've chosen a co-ed environment, how do they replicate the kind of experiences that you're talking about with these fantastic, inspirational environments for these girls? What advice would you give to parents who are going to be looking at co-ed in a serious way, in terms of both how they can, support their child, but what they can advise their child to do and how to handle that?
I mean, I think it can be a lot about the questions you ask those co-ed schools. How are you addressing some of these topics? How are you dealing with feminism? What female speakers have you had recently? What female alumna have you put in front of your children, all of them, girls and boys? Because it is important that boys are learning about this as well. I'm a governor of a boys' school, Halliford out in Shepperton, and they are doing talks on feminism for their sixth form, boys and girls. They're really making sure that they are taking their young men on this journey, and I have to say their young men are always just an absolute credit to everyone who's involved in their upbringing. So I think it's asking those direct questions. What are you doing for your young women to make sure that they're getting these experiences that you can get in single sex? Ask for those examples, ask for their speakers list, ask for their alumna, ask who's coming to their careers fairs. So which role models they're seeing and thinking, oh, that career is open to me, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I think when the girls are in the school as well, there are lots of questions to ask before you join, of course. But when you are in the school, I like the scary good, by the way, or the good scary. I use brave, not perfect. That's my phrase. But I think the encouraging the girl, your daughters, to get involved and to try things out, and if possible, getting them to, we operate sort of, for example, a system of big sisters where they come and they mentor a younger student, and having that older student in the school who can encourage them, do try this out, it's great, don't worry about it, it's worth it, it's fun, you'll get to know people. Because actually getting girls over the threshold into new activities, once they're there, they're great, but it's getting them started. Because girls, if you're not careful, will tend to perfectionism, because they have learnt that they get praise when they do really well. And so what they want is they want to get the great test result. They want to do well in the competition. And if they don't feel that they're going to do that, they just won't try. And as a result, they limit themselves. So what you want is you want to know and you want to encourage them to do so. And that a lot comes from you at home, but also from other students and the staff in the school. So ask those questions. How do you encourage girls to participate in things that they might not otherwise do if they're a bit worried about outcomes?
Brilliant, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the state of the education world at the moment and the changes that we're seeing in schools up and down the country. A lot of schools are needing to change what they're doing. They are, dropping years. They are going co-ed. They are, reducing the number of students on roll. There's a lot of pressure on the industry, on the sector at the moment, and schools are being forced to make a lot of, ask a lot of questions and decide what's best for their future. Let's have a think about single-sex girls' education. Is it on the wane? Is it at risk? We're seeing a lot of boys' schools going co-ed or plans to go co-ed. KCS is the big one. Was that this week that's come out that they'll be co-ed by 2035 or something like that? Is it only the boys' schools? Are we seeing girls' schools going co-ed? Is that something that we're going to see happening?
I think there probably will be some schools that look at that route, but I think primarily a lot of girls' schools exist for that very reason, to provide an all-girls education. And without that sense of all-girls values, the school would be completely changed in terms of its fabric. So I think that for all-girls schools, there is a really strong reason to maintain that status. And also with boys' schools going co-ed, there's perhaps more of an incentive to protect our girls' schools and to make them to give them a stronger position to attract more students looking for that all-girls education. Of course, it's a really challenging time, so it's important that we're really savvy about how we do that, and that we're looking after our pupil numbers and making sure the families that join the journey with us are really, really well served by what we offer, that all-girls education, and that we make sure it's modern and relevant and up to date, and that it competes with all of the schools that are merging in different directions. I think for all boys' schools, there are some benefits to attracting girls. Girls do moderate boys' behaviour, girls do bring up academic standards. But for us, it's really important to protect that space for girls so that they can learn with that sense of freedom, and that they have a voice, that they learn to advocate for themselves before they go off into that broader world. So I think if not more so than previously, there's more of a rationale for keeping our girls' schools as all-girls schools.
Any further comments on that?
I think I found a really interesting article the other day, which was written. It was in the Telegraph or something, but it was 15 years ago, and it was Anthony Selden was writing. He felt that girls' schools would have gone in 10 years' time. Well, that's 15 years ago, and we're still actually, as a sector, we are maintaining more single-sex schools than perhaps the boys are at the moment, which tells you something about the value of that. I thought it was amusing as an anecdote. But I think that we are, though, adapting as a sector. The sense that the girls emerge from an all-girls education somewhat like startled deer in headlights in a co-educational world just isn't true. We have, we all, and I'm pretty sure I'm looking at colleagues here, we all have good links with boys' schools. We, at Benenden, we work very closely with Tunbridge, for example, and we have the socials, those slightly awkward discos you used to have. We have those. But we also have more specific and more structured activities, which will cover co-curricular activities, but also that sense of debating and discussing. Girls and boys need to learn to disagree well and to debate and listen and consider. So we've been running empathy days, for example, with Tunbridge, where the girls and the boys have been discussing sort of issues of the moment, toxic masculinity being one of them, and having those different viewpoints and learning to discuss and debate quite challenging issues in a room together. And that's been really successful. And I think we all, as schools, are seeing that we do want to set up our students well to go into adult life, and interacting with young men is part of that. And so we are giving them those opportunities. So that perhaps is something that we do now more than maybe we did 15 years ago.
I would also add, I think there's still lots of girls who love being in all-girls education. I had a prospective family in yesterday, and they were actually from Turkey. And one of my sixth formers came to help translate because she speaks Turkish. And they were chatting to her about, is it not strange being in a girls' school? And, we're a central London school. They all have a very vibrant social life outside of school. And she was saying how we see, our male friends outside of school. We have those social relationships. It's brilliant. We love that when we come to school, it's just us. It's just our girls. It's just our sisterhood. And I thought that was really striking that, that's a 17-year-old young woman saying, no, we like this. We like the all-girls sector. And I think that will continue to drive uptake.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we're going to end the panel part of the session now. We're going to go straight into some questions. So we've already got some here. Yes.
Hi. Sorry, slightly controversial. Having been to a girls' school and then gone to a boys' school for sixth form, the girls' schools are quite bitchy compared to a co-ed environment. How do you deal with this? How do you mitigate it? I mean, admittedly, it was a while ago, but how's that changed? Because that is a sense in the sector.
Yeah, I think we hear that quite a lot from, I spent 14 years in girls' schools myself, and some of my reflections were probably similar to yours. I think in 2025, the scene has definitely changed. There's much more of a promotion of a culture of kindness in schools, and I think the culture of the school is really, really important. I'm not saying that bitchiness doesn't exist in some areas, but I think schools work really hard with their girls to create a culture of respect for each other. And I think that is whether they're in an all-girls school or whether they're in a co-ed school with groups of boys and girls. But I think it's that relationships with staff. I think when I look back to my time at school, we didn't have the close relationships with our teachers that children have nowadays. Most of our teachers are coaching trained, and they will have one-to-one meetings with their tutees and coach them through different friendship dynamics. So if anything, the girls are learning to manage conflict and to manage difficulties within relationships, and to learn, I think really importantly, to have high standards in all of their relationships and those skills that they'll take with them for life beyond school, those really, really important life skills.
I think I'd also add that, those mid-teen years, kind of year 8 to year 10, there are so many things going on at that age. Neurological development, the pace at which they're growing up means they are difficult years for girls to navigate, and they're going to be difficult whether they're in single sex or co-ed. Those are some really complicated years, and I think what we've got these days is a much greater understanding of what's actually going on in their heads at that point, how we can preemptively avoid some of the fallout, some of the upset, and when you understand where they're coming from, how we then manage it, because it does sometimes happen, but as I say, it will happen in co-ed or single sex at those ages, I think. And I think what's also really important is those years, just help them navigate them. It is really complex, those ages. Help them navigate themselves safely, keep those values really core. And you find that you get them out the other side in year 11. I'm currently watching my year 10 become year 11, and it's just a beautiful thing every year of watching that maturity suddenly dawn upon them, and the dust settles where their friendships do slip and slide those mid-teenage years, and it's to do with so many factors, and we're just trying to make sure we keep them on good morals, good values. When we do have those little earthquakes and rubbings up, manage that sensitively but robustly. You know, I think we're all also very clear. We all have good policies on this if it does go wrong, and we do act on those. And it's one of the things that makes it such a fascinating age group to work with.
I would add to that, but I would also say that, I mean, come and visit girls' schools and get a sense of that vibe of girls' schools. I was taken when I joined Benenden that genuinely the girls understand that the success of their friend does not diminish their success in any way, shape or form, and they are genuinely supportive. And that support of their peers is instrumental in improving their confidence and self-esteem. As Amy says, do they have hiccups along the way? Of course they do. Do we train our staff? Do we follow programs to give them those relationship tools to help deal with that within their friendship groups? Of course we do. But the outcome is I've got a very happy, vibrant school community, which, you know, is great to be part of.
So it sounds like girls' education has really come on in the last 2 decades, 3 decades, really there, in terms of the pastoral support available, in terms of, you talked to me about preempting things and being able to notice when there are those tensions and when things are going wrong. What about when things do just explode and things are problematic and you have a difficult group, a difficult year group? How do you handle that? What action is taken?
Well, I mean, for us, it's you know, we first seek to make sure we really understand what has happened, and we listen to everyone who's involved, make sure everyone's had their chance to say their piece. And if it is something that means they need to end up in my office, they end up in my office with me going, okay, tell me what happened. I make them put it in their own words, which is a very powerful moment, actually, when they have to eyeball me and say it. But then we very much talk about, was this you at your best? Because and being a smaller school, I know every girl, the heads of year, the SMT, we all know every girl. And I go, I really thought I didn't think this was you. I don't think this is you at all. And I have a girl sat there going, this is not me. I promise I'm better than this. I had a moment, I lost my temper, whatever it is. And actually, those conversations are enormously powerful in terms of not then seeing that behaviour repeated. And I think something that's really important with teenage girls when they have those moments, you've got to give them the way back. Teenage girls will hold on to the grudges. They'll hold on to that badge. I remember having girls in a previous setting, a girl coming to me saying, I can't probably apply for that, prefect role because of that thing I did in year 7. And I'm like, what thing did you, what? I can't even remember what you did. And she'd still held on to it for 5 years. And so I actively speak to them about, you've got this consequence, you need to put it right now, but I would like to see you in 2 years in a scholarship interview. I would like to see you in a prefect interview because that will tell me this moment worked. And I had, in a scholarship interview this time last year, a girl come in and say, when I first met you a year ago, I hadn't been my best self and you've really made me think about that and I've had a much better year and I really hope you'll now consider me. And she had a much better year and she is now one of my scholars and she's an absolute role model. So I think it's also us understanding that when they have these moments, how do we bring them back? Because we don't need to damn them. They'll do that to themselves. So how do we make sure we give them that way back? How can we give them that opportunity to show us they were better? And that, I think, is what then makes that really happy school, is that sense of there's always a way forward. I can be better. I can make progress.
Yeah, and one thing that will have changed since lots of us were at school is that lots of schools operate with a restorative practice and restorative approaches in terms of, especially when it's conflict between girls, which is often quite complex, it's often difficult to work out exactly what was said when, by who, that sometimes they just need to move on and trying to help them unstick themselves from those difficult conversations and situations. But at the same time, if students have been harmed, to make sure that they feel that they've had their voices heard and that they've been able to have an input so that any restorative intervention is not just done to that student, but they have a voice as well. And one of the most powerful tools we've got are our older pupils. And I think having year 11 or year 10 students speak to younger pupils in these situations to say, I was in the same situation as you 3 or 4 years ago. This is how we worked through it. This is the situation I'm now in, because these difficulties in year 7 and 8 very rarely reoccur in year 11, 12 or 13. The girls are much more mature by that point. They can look back on it and actually having a sense of humour as to how they've all come through those difficult challenges and how they've become better people for it, but they've made really, really good and deep friendships from it.
Well, sounds like a much more supportive, fostering environment than maybe when I was at school. Fantastic. Another question. I think we've got time for one more. No? You sure? Last chance?
What about sport? Because, sport is a really important thing, especially because actually women's sport after school is not great. So how do you get them into sport so much more that they want to continue into adulthood? Boys, they just put a couple of jerseys down, get a football out, and they play. And they stay fit.
Yeah, it's a really good question, but I think that lifelong love of sport or exercise or recreation is really, really important. And I think that comes from the culture from the sports department division they have, that participation and enjoyment always take precedent over performance. And that kind of culture works for everything in school as well. It's not just sport. But if they really value the participation and the well-being aspects of it, we find that our girls that do well academically, do well not despite all of their extra commitments, but because of them, and actually linking the well-being, the self-discipline, the motivation, and having just that balance and joy in life is really, really important. And when they can see that in action, I think if they ever go through a phase of being injured or not being able to play sport or exercise, they really do miss it. And I think from girls' schools, the statistics do show that they do have a stronger connection to sport right through to 18 and then beyond school as well.
I think it's also now about having choice. I'm always the first to admit, and I loved my school. I had such a wonderful time at my girls' school. I did not leave with a lifelong love of sport. And that, I think, is because I was forced out onto a lacrosse pitch or a netball court, neither of which is my natural area of skill at all. And I didn't have, therefore, that real enjoyment that you get from it. I think if I'd been doing some different sports, I'd have found one that I loved. And so I think what all of our schools now are doing is giving much greater choice. On a Thursday afternoon, my girls, they can be playing netball. They could also be playing football. They could be in a dance studio. They could be out on the River Thames rowing, and it gives them that opportunity to find the thing that they enjoy. And from that, they then get that love of sport. And it's also, as Emma says, I think saying it doesn't have to be about performance, Back when I was at school in the last century, it was a little bit more, are you going to be in the netball team or not? I was not. Whereas now we actively promote sports. We're like, this is for, our rowing program, it's a recreational rowing program. Go and have a lovely time doing some exercise on the river. We're not entering any regattas. You don't need to be very good at this. Go and do some exercise and have some fun. And I think that is what then gets them into that lifelong love. And some of them then do take up rowing with the local clubs and all the rest. But it's about that choice and that lack of pressure.
I think the other thing to add as well is that we are now more aware of the issues that stop women staying in sport. And one of those things is literally, I still have nightmares of having been forced out onto a hockey pitch with a skirt on, it was freezing cold and the rest of it. And now that things have moved on so much more in terms of sports kid and supporting and young girls particularly in making them feel comfortable whilst undertaking sport. And so there is a lot there, along with the enjoyment factor as well, and that's got to be key. But helping them understand that competition is fun as well and giving the opportunities to do that. So yes, all of those together.
Brilliant. So this has all been about finding the right fit for your child, finding the right school for your child, the right environment. And it sounds like we've given you a lot of questions to ask schools, whether you're going to a co-ed school or whether you're going to a single-sex school and going to the open day and talking to the school. Ask those questions on the topics that have come up today that have really resonated with you and that you care about. Ask those specific questions. Find out what the school is doing for sport, for leadership roles, for pastoral care, all of the above. Find all of that out to make the right choices for your child. Thank you so much to my wonderful panel.